Hey, what's up everyone? In today's video, we are going to go over the top 10 weapons in Elden Ring patch 1.09. Now within this patch, they have buffed quite a few weapons, as well as they have nerfed a few things within PvP, and that's strictly with PvP. We are going to be talking about great swords. The best great sword is Blasphemous Blade. This can be argued with Sacred Relic's sword as well as the great sword, because of course, both of them are good. So what's great about Blasphemous Blade? This right here will allow you to restore your HP upon defeating enemies. And what's great is that in the recent patch, they've increased the speed, range, and recovery time for some of these attacks, and this includes the great swords. You can use this to take out a bunch of enemies within one strike, and I'm going to show you that within this clip here. Now, I really do enjoy this because I think this is the most useful Ashes of War that is in the game, and especially the fact that when you do defeat them, again, there's a chance of healing up. Let's continue on towards the Knight Rider Glaive. What's great about this Glaive specifically is that when you use the spinning slash, it can take out an entire group of enemies if they're within your distance. And if you throw on something like Holy or maybe even Fire, and then you can possibly throw on something like the Scorpion Sacred Charm to increase your attack power. Not only this, if you did not know, in the recent patch, they've increased the scaling attributes for certain Ashes of War types, such as Fire, Lightning, Sacred. There's a few more there on the list. This Glaive is really good if you throw on two of them. I had a blast here taking out this dude that typically rides on the horse and tries to strike you out. It's honestly really a good weapon to use, and I recommend it in your next build. Next up, we now are going to talk about Next up is Great Stars, which is a great hammer. The thing about this one specifically that makes it so amazing is that when you do hit an enemy, it will restore 1% of health, and if you have two of them equipped, aka dual wielding the Great Stars, this will restore 2% of health. Now this depends on if you strike both of them. If you do not strike, with both of the weapons on top of the target, it may just restore 1% if one of your Great Stars hits the enemy, just for example. Now, this does have a good blood loss buildup, it does, and if you use the skill Endure, there's some great stuff about this because this will increase your poise for just 3 seconds there, and you will absorb a lot of damage. If you're looking for more of a blood loss build, then this next one is going to be absolutely a great one to use because it's Great Omen Killer Cleaver. This one is great because it does have the same blood loss buildup as the previous weapon, and not only that, there is the Wild Strikes. This is what I love about this weapon specifically, because you can take out a lot of enemies if they're within your range. Again, this is just great to run through them. For example, right here. Now, I have a talisman equipped, and this is the Winged Sworded Insignia, which increases my attack power for every successful attack. Now, not only this specific weapon can be infused with Holy, or pretty much any type that you want, and you can throw on a talisman to increase it, and this is one of the weapons that was buffed during patch. Next up, we have Envoys Great Horn, which is fantastic for damage. Not only this, in the recent patch, they've also buffed it by adding an increased projectile generation speed, and they have reduced the recovery time. The Ashes of War for this is absolutely great because this is going to be the Great Oracular Bubble. This has a lot of damage with it, and not only that, the Great Horn itself has a lot of damage when striking. Now, when you try to use the Great Oracular Bubble, what can happen is you might end up being striked or taking some arrows. What you can do is throw on something like the Opaline Bubble Tier or some other way to negate some of that damage, and this is great because you, of course, will outbeat all of them, especially if this hits a group of enemies. This, of course, is holy damage only, so if you want to increase that, you can throw on talismans like the Scorpion Sacred Charm that I've mentioned so much about. I guess I'm just in love with holy damage so far, but that's just what I like about this game, is that you have your choices. If you want to use something like Bleed, you absolutely can. Speaking of Bleed, you can use something like Mogwin's Sacred Spear, because in the recent patch, this, of course, is absolutely amazing. They have done some things specifically to spears because, if you did not know, they've reduced the hitbox size. So, for example, thrust swords, heavy thrusting swords, spears, great spears, and halberds have been affected to some extent. but it's still worth using nonetheless. And I think this is going to be more of an updated post because, of course, this has been around since patch 1.07, and that's been at the start of the game. Yet regardless, this is great if you throw on something like the White Mask, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and even if you throw on the sworded, or the, winged sword insignia, that will increase the damage as well. If you do plan on using this spear, I highly recommend that you use something to negate the damage, because when you use the Ashes of War, you're kind of just stuck in that stance of using it, but you can hop out of it. And most importantly, you do want to level up your stat Arcane for this build. And not only that, this spear is just phenomenal against bosses and enemies in general. I mean, if you take a look on screen, this boss right here is going to be wiped out. If you want to check out my build from yesterday's video, you definitely can do so by clicking on my name down below there and then clicking on the videos, and you should be able to see the Arcane Glaive build. Definitely recommend using this. It's something that you can literally probably use throughout the whole entire game, essentially until you run across an enemy that does not have blood loss. But regardless, it's still worth using. So let's not stop just there at blood, because let's continue on with another bloody weapon that you can use, which is Margit's Cursed Sword. And this does have a great Ashes of War, aka skill, which is going to be Cursed Blood Slice. This is another weapon that will absolutely help you out when you are ganged up in either PvP or PvE, because you can annihilate quite a few enemies with this. Now, this does inflict blood loss, so you will want to use something like White Mask or even the Lord of Blood Exaltation. You can also use the Sworded Winged insignia. There's also that. There's also just a bunch of stuff that you could throw in here really to increase the damage. And in the recent patch, they have increased their projectile generation speed and reduced the recovery time for this as well. This is one of the best weapons literally in the game. And honestly, it's all thanks to the 1.09 patch for completely buffing this weapon. Moving on towards the Cranial Vessel Candle Stand. This right here was one of the weapons that was buffed for its speed, range, and recovery time in patch 1.09. And not only that, it definitely increased its projectile generation speed. So this does have a lot of worth to it now, and it does shoot out those flame balls, or whatever you want to call it, quickly, and it does add a lot of damage. If you want to increase the damage, by all means, throw on the Fire Scorpion Charm, because that will increase your fire damage by 12%, yet you will take in 10% damage, because that is the positives and the negatives of using the Scorpion Charm. For example, on this larger enemy here, I'm going to use Surge of Faith. It's going to wipe him, and yeah, he's completely done, like not even existing anymore. Now, a majority of the weapons I've included in this video are great for taking out a large group of enemies. Now, what I do recommend is that when you do use the skill Surge of Faith, you will be in that stance there, yet you can roll out of it easily. But what I do recommend is that you throw in something to negate the damage. Now, this was not the only weapon that was buffed, because if we take a look at the Giza Wheel, they've specifically buffed the Spinning Wheel. They've increased the attack generation speed, and they've added a way for the roll and heavy attack cancel timing. So this way, when you're using the skill, you can exit out of it a lot faster. This is, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of this, but for a lot of people, this is the weapon for them. Now, it is great because it does have the blood loss buildup. The reason why I say it's not for me is because it does not work with certain talismans, such as the Winged Sword Insignia, the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia, and it does not work with the Shard of Alexander neither. So when you're trying to increase the damage with it, it's just not going to work the way you think it would. So yeah, it's just not for me, but for a lot of people, if you do want to use something with great blood buildup, of course, there is the notorious Rivers of Blood. You can use that with White Mask, Lord Bloods of Exaltation. You can use it with Winged Sword Insignia. And it's, man, there's just a lot that you can do with this specific katana. Now, of course, that build is not new at all. You can use that now. You could have used it back at 1.07. It's still worth using. There's nothing that's been widely changed. It's just, it's all good. And yeah, so with all that being said, I hope that you guys have enjoyed the video. If you are new to the channel, feel free to subscribe, click the bell icon, and make sure that you click it so you're notified for all. And if you have any questions, leave them down below. And I'll see you all in the next video.